Kashmir Valley has been tense once again for the last 3 days after 3 young men lost their lives. This as an encounter was going on in the valley's Badgam area to flush out a militant who was hiding there. What really happened? Why were these young boys protesting at the venue, at the location of an encounter? What does this really mean for the already tense situation the valley has been in since last July when his militant Burhan Wani was killed in a security operation? Joining us to talk about this some more is the former Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir and the leader of the National Conference, Omar Abdullah. Omar, thanks very much for being on the buck stops here tonight. I want to start by asking you, we're seeing an unprecedented situation where as security forces are conducting an operation, an encounter against militants, you have the public coming out onto the streets and trying to sort of protect this individual. What's going on?
Well, I mean, as you've said, it's unprecedented. This is something we've seen developing over the last couple of years. It started on a much smaller scale in parts of South Kashmir. The scale and the intensity in South Kashmir has increased quite dramatically, and now we've seen the spread to Central Kashmir. I think the security forces were caught completely unawares by what happened in Chadura, because I don't think they expected this sort of reaction from the surrounding areas. The problem is that I don't think anyone in a position of authority is trying to understand exactly what is going on here. They're looking for very simplistic arguments and reasons to explain what's happening, and then they're feeding that narrative to sections of the media in a sort of self-congratulatory mode that all this is happening because Pakistan is inciting this trouble by paying money and flashing WhatsApp messages. I mean, the moment you start looking for such simple solutions to such complex problems, I mean,
there's going to be an issue.
This will only multiply. It won't go away.
What's the role? I mean, you're in the opposition right now, and yet one can argue that when you were in power, protests also took place. Some went out of hand, but there was an attempt to have a commission of inquiry, etc. We've seen the Yashwant Sinha report that talks about building bridges and a reconciliation, addressing human rights problems, really. We're in a situation right now where the army chief says those who are protesting on the street will be considered to be proxies for terrorists. The chief minister is talking about a parenting issue, saying parents should stop these boys, but these boys are not, 15 and 16 or 12, 23 and 24. Where is the parenting over here?
Well, how can you parent a 24-year-old? I mean, in today's day and age, Maya, how can you parent a 15-year-old? I'm the father of 2 teenagers. I mean, there is a point beyond which kids just decide for themselves. Parents don't get to decide for children after a certain point in time.
So what do you make of her statement?
I mean, these are very highly inflamed. No, but these are highly inflamed passions. I mean, you need to understand. I again come to that point. I'm not apologizing for what these boys are doing or what these young men are doing. I hold no brief for them. But I do believe it's important to understand the sentiment that prevails, that is driving these people out. Again, I make the point that when we look for simplistic sort of explanations for why this is happening and pin it down on money and WhatsApp messages, then we are missing the wood for the trees.
Right, but Omar, nonetheless, we're in a situation right now where the message really seems to be that the approach is going to be a law and order approach. We're once again talking about trying to create the need for an awareness that there's a political solution that's required over here. At the end of the day, when you have people in Delhi, people in positions of power making these statements, you have a government in Jammu and Kashmir of the BJP and the PDP in power. Where does one go from here? I think the question is really that, because since July 2016, this is all we've been seeing.
Well, unfortunately, we seem to have learned no lessons from the summer of 2016. Jammu and Kashmir is not a law and order problem. Yes, there are components of law and order that give rise to trouble in Jammu and Kashmir, but the root cause of what we see, the genesis of this problem, doesn't lie in Jammu and Kashmir's law and order. It lies in Jammu and Kashmir's politics. Now, we can have a long discussion after what has happened in Jammu and Kashmir from 1953 onwards, but this is neither the time nor the place. I think a basic acceptance that the root cause of what you see in Jammu and Kashmir lies in Jammu and Kashmir's politics, and a political solution is the way forward, is something that needs to be accepted at a very senior level in Government of India, and then some forward movement. Unfortunately, you made mention of Mr. Yashwant Sinha and his report. The fact is that there are no owners, there are no takers for Mr. Yashwant Sinha's efforts or for his report in New Delhi. His report might as well have been consigned to the dustbin by the powers that be, because you have seen absolutely no effort to take that report and do anything with it.
Right. Omar, you make the point that the centre really doesn't seem to be paying attention to the need for to address the political issue. That's one part of the problem. Right now, within Jammu and Kashmir, the people's own political representatives, parties like yours, parties like the PDP, or on the other side, even the separatists, perhaps, if you will, no one seems to be in a position to represent the people on the street. No one knows, no one has control over these crowds. What does that say about politicians like you and parties like yours?
Look, I can only speak for myself and my party. We have never claimed to represent 100% of the political space of Jammu and Kashmir. Not even at the peak of National Conference's popularity did we represent 100% of political opinion. Forget about in the state, even in the valley. Even at the height of my grandfather's popularity in Kashmir, there were sections of political opinion that he didn't represent. So the same is true today. In fact, if anything, that section has grown. So I can't claim to represent those youngsters that are today coming out and trying to disrupt militant anti-militancy operations, or who are coming out to throw stones at security forces. I mean, they obviously don't find common cause in the political slogans that the National Conference is putting forth. But that doesn't mean we leave them out of the political process. That doesn't mean that we completely abandon them or forget about including them in any plans that we may have.
Right.
They don't identify with the National Conference. Today they don't identify with the PDP. But that, I mean, I'm sure there is some section of opinion, there is some section of leadership that we can involve in the dialogue process that they may identify with.
Right.
The idea is to keep trying. The idea is to try and keep talking to people and bring them on board.
And I think the real challenge really is if, there isn't enough of an impetus given from the political power centers, be they in Delhi or the Chief Minister's office in Jammu and Kashmir. Ultimately, what's happening is that the vacuum gets wider and is being filled in by people nobody wants in the valley in this position right now. Omar Abdullah, thanks very much for being on the buck stops here tonight. We're unfortunately out of time. We'll have to leave it at that. But the challenge is really, as the summer continues and the summer kicks in, seem to be mounting for the centre and the state. Thanks very much for being on the buck stops here. Well, to take this debate further tonight, we have with us in the studio Sohail Bukhari, the PDP spokesperson, joining us from Kolkata, Sambit Patra of the BJP joining us. From Srinagar, we have Siddiq Wahid, Professor Siddiq Wahid, the author and commentator, and of course, General Shankar Prasad also joining us from his residence in Delhi. I want to open with Sohail Bukhari very quickly. Sohail Bukhari, the police chief has said that these boys who are coming out in these crowds are on a suicide mission, and there's going to be, the bullets don't know who they're going to be hitting. The chief minister is saying that there needs to be an urgent political solution. It seems to me that the BJP has also said that the police chief is right about what he's saying. Are the BJP and the PDP on the same page currently on the crisis in Jammu and Kashmir?
Well, I believe yes, both the parties are on the same page, and if you look at these individual statements and put them together in the larger frame, you would find that we are precisely talking about the same issues. What the Director General Police of Jammu and Kashmir has said is purely from an operational point of view. His men are there out on the ground dealing with the militants. There have been encounters, and of course, when there is an exchange of fire from two sides, anybody who comes in between runs the risk of being hurt. And if he deliberately does it, of course, that is not something that is desirable. And precisely why Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti has been asking for, even the parents. I was listening to what Omar had to say. just because a kid does not listen to you, you believe so, does not mean that you would abandon him and let him go and, you know, hurt him. You would have to try and...
But I think the Chief Minister's appeal to parents not to let their boys out is something that perhaps is a sign of desperation as well. At the end of the day, you have a situation where this is being dealt with as a law and order problem. We've seen unrest in the valley from July 2016. Sambit Patra, let me bring you in also very quickly. You know, two things. One is that there is a perception that the situation in Jammu and Kashmir is now only being dealt with as a law and order problem. That's one. The second is, as Omar Abdullah also pointed out, the Yashwant Sinha committee report has made certain recommendations. What's the status on looking at that report and implementing some of those recommendations?
See, as far as the issue of Jammu and Kashmir is concerned, we have to understand the problem to find a solution. Now, I would remind you, only about a fortnight ago, there was a video which was in fact shown by most of the English news channels and the Hindi news channels, of course. The video was of Musa, the successor of Burhan Wani. And what was the message that Musa was trying to send across to the youngsters of Jammu and Kashmir? Musa's call was, don't pick up the stone to free Kashmir. Don't pick up the stone to fight for Kashmir. Pick up the stone in the name of Islam, because we want a caliphate to be created. So naturally there is some kind of radicalization, and the tangent of fight in Jammu and Kashmir has changed, and we have to realize this. As far as what is the stand of the government is absolutely clear. We want peace. We want to talk to the stakeholders in Jammu and Kashmir. And who are the stakeholders? The stakeholders in Jammu and Kashmir are those who have faith on the constitution of this country. If you have faith in the constitution of the country, you can talk to us. We are ready to talk and we are ready to solve the problems. Thirdly, my question is, what is the political solution? I was listening to Mr. Omar Abdullah right now. He was saying, in fact, it's a very complex problem. Now, what is the problem? Do you want development? They say, no, we do not want development. Do you want a package for development? Because that's your right. Your 80,000 crore rupees package is your right. You say, no, schools and buildings are not important. Right. What is it that you want? If you want freedom, forget it. If you want an autonomous situation pre-1953, forget it. Because you are an integral part of India, and there would be no compromise with that.
But there is a political question that needs to be addressed, and everybody in Jammu and Kashmir is going to accept that reality irrespective of how you might want to address it. The question really was on the Yashwant Sinha committee report as well, which talked about human rights violations, which talked about trying to create and open up a dialogue process with all parties. But we'll get to that in a minute. General Shankar Prasad, let me come to you very quickly. The incident that took place in Chadura, there was one militant with a pistol. And the sense is that, you know, the people who came out from around the neighboring villages, I mean, does it really require a WhatsApp forward for them to know that this encounter is taking place in their neighborhood? That's one. The second is, how does the army make its own assessments on the ground when you have one militant with a pistol who's decided to take shelter in a house for whatever reason, and the sort of mortar shelling that's going on outside? There is a disproportionate use of force perhaps, really, and there is going to be collateral damage in this situation.
Yeah, no, that's not correct at all. That's not the way it should be looked at all. Look, let's be very clear as to what happens on ground. Whether there's one terrorist, 5 terrorists or 20 terrorists is not known till the operation is over. You got many examples before you. In Pathankot, if you recall, they said 1, 2, 3, 4, and finally some figure was arrived at. The point is very straightforward. When the military is carrying out a legitimate military task to neutralize terrorists, wherever they are holed, they will take appropriate military action to reduce him in national security and national interest. If anybody interferes in that operation, he will be dealt with as per the directions of the Chief of the Army Staff, which are in public domain, to say that if you permit anybody to interfere with us, we will consider him as an overground. And people gave a reasonably good understanding of that. Now, what happened thereafter? This is something that we must understand.
Right.
What happened thereafter? Some political leaders condemned the Chief of the Army Staff statement, which emboldened the youngsters to continue doing what they were doing, because they felt that some political parties, some political leaders of national stature are supporting that kind of activity.
Okay.
That's another point. The next point which you've been raising for the last few minutes, and I want to just say, even though I'm not a politician, the solution in Kashmir is political.
Right.
The armed forces, the police and the paramilitary can only create a conducive situation, environment.
So I think the challenge right now, sir...
No, let me just say it.
Yeah,
Maya, just give me a chance. Because it's a political matter, let me just give you a chance. I have a view on it and you must give me a chance to say it, even though I'm not a politician.
Very briefly, sir, go ahead.
I look, very briefly, I look at it as a political problem. The political problem can only be is by all these important, very responsible political leaders of national parties sitting in Delhi or in Kashmir or elsewhere must understand what is good for Kashmir.
Right.
Is it good for Kashmir to keep burning the way it is burning, or is it good for So therefore, what they have to, you know, there's a young man whom you saw on your television channel the other day,
Sir, I'm going to interrupt you for a
moment.
He's a new guy. Sir, I'm going to interrupt you. Sadiq Wahid, I want to bring you... I want to just
that
bring
is going to change the political spectrum.
Yeah, I just want to bring Sadiq Wahid in on this. You've been listening to everybody on the panel speak. Sadiq, it's very clear that, you know, as General Shankar Prasad is saying, the forces are there to perhaps help create an atmosphere conducive for political representatives to come forward to dialogue. Now, you know, we seem to be at a bit of an impasse right now because the people who meant to create that atmosphere are also at the receiving end of some of the criticism at this point in time.
They have political sagacity.
We are at an impasse.
Yeah, go ahead, Sadiq.
Maya, we are at an impasse, and it's a dangerous impasse. And it is a dangerous impasse for a very simple reason, and that is it's a zero-sum game. You had Mr. Patra just saying on television that if you want freedom, forget it. If you want to go back to 1953, forget it. That's a zero-sum game. That's a signal that there's nothing to talk about unless you want to talk about how roads are going to be cleaner and whatever it is.
Did you expect you to give? Did you expect us to give you freedom?
I didn't interrupt you.
Let Sadiq finish his point. That's fair, Sambit. He didn't interrupt. Nobody interrupted you. Let him finish his point. Go ahead, Sadiq.
So the point is that, you know, there is no sort of impetus for talking, either on the part of the government or on the part of the protesters here in Kashmir.
Right.
And I call that a dangerous impasse. The question is that we've talked a lot about solution, political solution, etc., you know, and the thing is that the government has to accept, is this a political problem or not? And from what I hear Mr. Patra saying, it's not a political problem, it's a law and order problem, because these people are so ignorant that they don't want development.
Okay. In fact, I want Sohail Bukhari to come in on that as well. Sohail Bukhari, you've heard Sambit Patra also speak. I mean, the two of you are speaking in very different voices.
Well, I wouldn't say so. We, both of us, have agreed on an agenda of alliance.
Right,
that
but
draws
Sambit Patra is saying, you know, what is the definition of a political dialogue?
Well, you know, you'll have to start, you'll have to talk to various people with various opinions. We are not talking about what is going to be the end of that, what is going to be the conclusion. But the idea is that we'll engage everyone. Let's hear from everyone and then see what exactly...
Are you saying that political dialogue should only be about development and about infrastructure? The issue really is one of what the demands have been. How do you address that? Because until that's part of the political conversation, forget the solution, the conversation, how do you even bring back Kashmir from the impasse it's at today?
Maya, various people may have different opinion, but the Bharatiya Janata Party's government's opinion is absolutely clear. It is crystal clear, and mark my words, Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India. No one can challenge that. Do you, Maya? Even you think otherwise? And this kind of narrative...
I'm not challenging that it's an integral part of India, and it's not about my view, Sambit Patra. So it's basically about asking you, there is a situation on the ground that's imploding. How do you control it?
Let me answer that.
I'm not creating the situation. There's no point questioning me.
I'm saying that even no one, no Indian, including you, me or anyone in this panel would say that Jammu and Kashmir is not a part of India. So if all of us agree to the fact, which is a truth, that Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India, so what dialogue would you have on the issue of freedom from India, succession of India? So a truth which is established need not be discussed. Number two, well, yes, who runs away from dialogue? In fact, recently Mr. Rajnath Singh had been to Jammu and Kashmir, recently in the sense that last summer that we were talking about, he had been to Jammu and Kashmir. He spoke to the real stakeholders in Jammu and Kashmir, the students, the businessmen, the
and he
the
produced
tourists,
a report
and
saying
the ones
that
who were
these
promoting
things need
tourism.
to be addressed. And he produced a report saying these things need to be addressed. So
Yes.
here, Bukhari, I'm going to give you
We
the last
we
word.
stand
because
for
we're out of time.
development.
Do you
We
agree
stand
with
for
Sambit
development.
Patra
We
when he
want
says
Jammu and
forget about
Kashmir to
autonomy?
develop.
Well, you know, I would say that autonomy is one of the demands from one of a mainstream political party in the state of Jammu and Kashmir.
Which is the PDP.
Autonomy,
as well.
autonomy
Yes.
is what the National Conference agenda has been. PDP has been seeking the self-rule. But we have to understand that these are individual demands from various stakeholders
So
in the
Sambit
company.
Patra, your alliance partner, is saying this is off the table.
The idea is that we'll have to listen to everyone.
No,
we are not talking about the conclusions drawn as of now. The conversation has to start somewhere, and then whatever is seen as a...
Okay, all right, okay. I have 30 seconds left. Siddiq Wahid, I'm going to give you those 30 seconds because at the end of the day, you really need to find a way to bring this situation under control. The summer is upon us. If it's going to be such a volatile summer, unfortunately, things are going to completely spiral out of control once again. How do you roll back from this?
Maya, rolling back from this, I don't know. I mean, because it depends on how the situation comes out on the ground. But if the attitude is what I have sensed in the last, 5 or 10 minutes, and that the position of the government is that we're not going to talk, and that the only thing that we're going to talk is we're going to dictate what we're going to talk. I hold very firmly to the view that this is a disputed issue.
Can I please come in for 10 seconds, Maya?
And so therefore it has to be addressed.
Okay, all right, unfortunately...
I also want to end on an optimistic
Maya,
note.
just 10 seconds.
Unfortunately, we're completely out of time.
Maya, just 10 seconds.
10 seconds, Sambit, I'm counting. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have to stop this narrative that Burhan
remark.
Wani was a poor headmaster's son, and we have to stop this narrative that this terrorist was just a militant with a single gun.
Nobody is stopping that. Nobody is. It's not about a narrative. Nobody is defending.
To stop this narration.
Sambit, nobody is defending the terrorist.
This is a narrative which needs to be
Maya, just give me one
Sambit Patra, a poor militant with a single gun.
Nobody is defending the terrorist. We're talking about 3 people who were killed outside in the protest. Nobody is defending the terrorist. General Shankar Prasad, last 10 seconds to you, sir. General Shankar Prasad, last 10 seconds to you, sir.
I am looking at young people like Maharaj Malik, whose political thoughts are different than what the old politicians have been doing. That's a silver lining.
Okay.
Those are the kind of young people we want to induct into politics to see the change of Kashmir. It may not happen this summer, it may not happen next summer, but it is very much on the cards. These young people, educated people who think what is good for their community, good for the people, are the ones that must come up in the political arena to fight elections, win them, and run Kashmir. That's the optimistic way I'm looking at it.
Fair point. That's a note to leave this conversation on. The youth of Kashmir that's out there protesting, someone try and talk to them, bring some of them back into the political mainstream and try and figure out a way for them to actually maybe open up, initiate the dialogue process, but something needs to be done very, very quickly. Thanks a lot for watching. The buck stops here tonight.